Part 122. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1211. At that time, the late emperor was in good health. Although the king of Yizhu was young and not even a weak crown, there were still many people on his side. After all, the merits were high at the time. The third prince was also favored by the late emperor, and there were many people around them. Some people can't squeeze in, so many people choose the king of Yizhu for the head of the chicken rather than the tail of the phoenix. Anyway, the emperor is not dead. Any prince below has his own struggle, and he will quit after the event fails. So even if the king of Yizhu went to the clan, some people still maintained an ambiguous relationship with him. At that time, the one who followed the king of Yizhu was Master Guan. At that time, the world was not completely stable, and Yizhu was very poor. Master Guan helped the king of Yizhu build Yizhu city. I wanted to accumulate strength first, and then fight for it later. After all, the late emperor was in his prime, and he lived another 10 or 8 years. Who knows what the future will be like? Yizhu developed under such circumstances. The king of Yizhu contacted many people during this period. Who knew the situation could change so quickly? Lanja Road was unstable, rebels were everywhere, and the 2 generals sent by the imperial court were all destroyed. At that time, the first prince had just passed away unwillingly, and most of the contacts of the East Palace were handed over to the third prince. But the second prince fought for the southern and northern wars of the country, and he had countless generals and commanders. In terms of military merit, the first prince would have to retreat to the second prince. Therefore, the first emperor did not want to use the second prince, but Long Yudao lost 12 cities in a row, and in the end he had no choice but to let the second prince lead his troops to fight. In order to prevent the second prince from accumulating military merit, the emperor decided to go on a personal expedition, leaving the third prince to supervise the country. There are different opinions about what happened later, and no one can tell why the second prince wanted to bypass the emperor who was sitting in the rear. Mercedes-Benz returned to Beijing to kill the third prince, and then went out of Beijing to welcome the holy car. Today, the power is high, the first prince has died of illness, and the third prince has also died. Among the princes who have been born directly, only he and the king of Yizhu are left. At that time, many people thought that the first emperor might support the king of Yizhu to fight against the second prince. The king of Yizhu also thought so. He was all prepared, and the people who crowded into the boat of the king of Yizhu were also prepared. As a result, after being silent for a month, the late emperor issued an edict to leave the second prince as the crown prince. Later, he may be too sad, or it may be that he was tired when he was traveling in person. Anyway, he was ill. There are many people who suspect that the late emperor was poisoned today, but the imperial hospital could not find out, and the courtiers and noble families had no evidence. Anyway, the first emperor died of a serious illness less than a year after the death of the third prince. Today's logical ascension to the throne has completely cut off the way of the king of Yizhu. The road was cut off, but King Yizhu's thoughts did not stop. Some of the people who squeezed into the boat escaped smoothly, and some also wanted to cut off their thoughts and leave. There has always been a disconnected connection. For example, Zhang Shishi, at first, he may not be willing to do this rebellion for the king of Yizhu, but after more than 10 years of connection, he first did some food and land business together, and then recommended talents to each other, or recommended promotions. The more things we do together, the deeper we sink naturally, and finally we sink into the quagmire and never get out. Just like him. Master Guan took advantage because he died early. He didn't want to continue, and he slowly got out 10 years ago, but so what, didn't he have to live in fear under the eyes of the king of Yizhu for more than 10 years? There is no way to protect yourself on this road. Once you have set foot on it, you will never want to come down again. So even if Pei Ziwen knew that the final result was not good, he had to bite the bullet and go on and do his best to protect the king of Yizhu. Because only he is alive, they have some hope. If he dies, they are all finished. Therefore, Pei Ziwen is now using his life to advise the king of Yizhu, and the king of Yizhu has many soldiers and horses. It is impossible for Yin Li to use so many people to keep them all. So the king of Yizhu broke out. But Yin Li was not surprised at all, and still sat firmly in the middle of the tent to command. The king of Yizhu rushed out with a group of soldiers and horses, but in the end, he was still clenching a group of chasing soldiers. One of the generals couldn't help but said, "My lord, go first, we will break." The king of Yizhu did not refuse, and after leaving a sentence, he left with the rest of the people. The central army quickly got a report, "General, they seem to be going to Zizhu." Only then did Yin Li get up, took the sword and said, "The 3 caves of the crafty rabbit, the king of Yizhu has made a lot of preparations, let's go and have a look." Yin Li assigned the task to continue to attack the stubborn rebel army, and then gather the defeated army, and he took the remaining 5,000 troops to chase the king of Yizhu. He didn't push it too tightly, he always wanted him to clear his whole cards, otherwise, if he kept it, it would turn into a pus after a long time. So it's best to remove it now. Yin Li finally drove the king of Yizhu outside the city of Zizhu. The king of Yizhu was so shocked that he rushed into Zizhu for help almost without thinking. Pei Ziwen wanted to stop him, but after thinking about it, it was useless to keep his hands behind, so he didn't use them at this time. Thinking about it again, it must be a death to follow, it might as well. The army was scattered. The governor of Zizhu was disturbed from the moment he received the announcement from Yang Heshuan. He was still waiting for the news, but the king of Yizhu gave him such a big shock within 2 days. Hearing that the king of Yizhu led the remnant soldiers into the city to ask for help, he gritted his teeth, turned around to take the sword, and said to the opponent, "The king of Yizhu is rebellious, please follow me to kill the enemy and quell the rebellion." The confidants who knew the inside story looked at each other and then answered yes in unison with the other subordinate officials. King Yizhu did not expect that the rescue soldiers would kill him in turn. He was stunned when the soldiers in front of him were shot by arrows and fell off their horses. Then the gate of the prefectural government opened wide, and officers and soldiers armed with swords and bows and arrows shouted from inside to kill him. "Out, destroy the traitors!" King Yizhu's face was ashen, and the 2 sons who were clinging to his side were pale, and finally couldn't help crying, "Father, let's descend, with the imperial grandmother here, the imperial uncle will not kill us." The 2 of them really didn't know that their father wanted to rebel. They only felt that the Yizhu palace was second only to the imperial palace, and their father's power was only under the royal uncle. They were not convinced by the crown prince, nor did they look down on the 3rd prince, but they never thought of replacing the royal uncle. The expression of the king of Yizhu changed. At this time, the people led by Yin Li also caught up. The rebels were attacked from the left and right, and everyone fought together. The king of Yizhu and the king of Xinping County, who were surrounded in the middle, looked like the only reef in the tidal wave. The encirclement was getting smaller and smaller, and blood was splashed on the faces of the Xianan County kings and the Xinping County kings. The 2 couldn't help grabbing the arms of the Yizhu king. "Father, let's go down, think about the royal grandmother." King Yizhu's hand holding the sword tightened and loosened and tightened. Just when he was about to say something, an arrow came through the air and killed the guard standing in front of him before the guard fell down. An arrow followed and shot straight into his chest. "I thought I changed it, so I forgot, so the 2 chapters will be together." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1212. All the words of King Yizhu were blocked in his chest. He stared at Yin Li, who was sitting steadily on the horse, and looked back at him expressionlessly. At this moment, the king of Yizhu remembered something wrong. Why was Yin Li here? He didn't see him when he returned to Beijing. Didn't it mean that he was impeached, so he went out to Beijing to avoid the limelight. King Yizhu remembered all the unreasonable things, but he had no chance to say it again, and he fell slowly under Yin Li's eyes. The kings of Xianan and Xinping screamed, supported the fallen king of Yizhu, raised their heads and were about to surrender, but the soldiers who had already killed the red-eyed soldiers didn't listen to them, and Yin Li didn't raise his hand to stop, so he put it down. The rebel army, who wanted to surrender, was also cut down the next moment. Obviously, Yin Li denied their surrender. Xianan County King's eyes were splitting. He turned his head to stare at Yin Li, and shouted, "Yin Li, I have surrendered, you still dare to kill me." Before he finished speaking, a knife was cut from behind, cutting off half of his head, and he fell down without having a chance to say his unfinished words. The Prince of Xinping shook his lips, glanced at his father in his arms, and at the elder brother who was lying next to him. Tears and snot were streaming down his face, so he could only touch a knife himself, and finally closed his eyes and killed himself. Yin Li sat on the horse and watched all this, and when all the rebels were suppressed, he raised his hand to stop it, and the officers and soldiers of the Western Army and the governor's mansion stopped together. Before Yin Li hit the horse, he looked condescendingly at the blood-covered governor of Zizhu with a sharp sword in his hand. "Master Su is very brave, and I would have reported it truthfully." The prefect of Zizhu, however, with a pale face, pulled his lips away and smiled, expressing his understanding. Only then did Yin Li glance at the officers and soldiers of the governor's mansion, and let the Western army gather the bodies of the three princes of Yizhu and leave. The deserters scattered by the king of Yizhu have to be dealt with, otherwise, these people will become bandits and harm the neighbors in the future. In the dead of night at night, he wrote down the military situation of the Prince of Yizhu and his son's death in the chaos of the army and handed it to his subordinates, saying, "Hurry up and send it back to Beijing in the morning." Yes. Keep the corpses of the three kings of Yizhu, father and son, and wait until Mizhu to buy a good coffin. Yes. The order goes on, and all the states and counties cooperate to retreat from the chaotic army. It is advertised in various places that those who surrender to the army will not be killed, but will only serve in the Western army. If they dare to cause harm to the village, once their place of origin is found out, the whole family will not be slaves. Yes. The military orders were passed down one by one, and with the help of Yang Heshu and Tang's Haihe, the military disaster caused by the king of Yizhu was gradually settled. Except for a small number of deserters who stayed in the mountains and did not want to come out, most deserters came out and surrendered. Some of them stripped their clothes and began to run back to their villages as refugees, or continue to be refugees. Most of the private army of the king of Yizhu were gathered from the refugees, and now they have become refugees again, except that their complexion is a little rosier than the average refugee, and the body is a little stronger than the ordinary refugee, but there is nothing too big. The difference. Tang's Haihe's eyes could clearly tell the difference when such people entered Yizhu city, but he didn't say anything. Instead, after copying the Yizhu king's mansion, he made some files on the refugee land previously occupied by the Yizhu king. A judgment was issued, and the sentence was returned to the refugees or the county government. Then use the part belonging to the county government to settle the refugees. The first to be gathered are those who are relatively strong, have land, and have household registration. As long as they are not vicious people, they will not kill or commit illegal acts. On the contrary, in order to cover up the fact that they are deserters, they are more well-behaved than ordinary refugees, and they are more kind. Yang Hesha saw Tang's Haihe's bold operation, and after being silent for a while, he couldn't help but say, "You are bold enough." Tang's Haihe sneered at him, "With this wave of credit, you and I must return to Beijing. The refugees in your jurisdiction have settled down early, and my subordinates are still in chaos. I will always go back after finishing my work." After a moment of silence, Yang Hesha said, "You can't do this. The deserters and refugees will be settled first. The refugees who have been waiting before must have opinions, and it will be chaotic in the long run. Isn't this making trouble for the next one? Yang Heshe taught him how to use work as a substitute for fertile land. Those who got the fertile land first had to build roads, bridges, and water conservancy facilities. Anyway, they were well raised by the king of Yizhu and had a lot of strength. It happens to be winter now. The land you gave them, said to be fertile land, has been abandoned by the king of Yizhu for several years. The winter wheat is not in time, so it is better to repair the water conservancy. Yang Heshe taught him, these refugees don't have seed farming tools, and they have to prepare these things after the spring, but at that time you are long gone, and the successor does not know what to do. I mean, you take the opportunity to prepare these things, and then use the relief for work, so that they have enough food for the winter, so that the seeds sent down will not be eaten. People don't care if they are the seeds of the coming year when they are hungry, they will eat if they are hungry. But you can't leave your successor alone, always give him something to do, so that he can accumulate merits. Yang Heshe said, when the time comes, you will write a letter and divide the fertile land in the fief of Yizhu king. Some of them belong to the county government, and many officials in Yizhu have been implicated this time, and they have taken away all the fertile land they occupied before. The county government has so many fields in its name. When your successor takes office, he is not stupid and knows that he has to settle the refugees. He has achieved such a great achievement when he takes office. I think he will not be stingy with new grains or farm implements. This group of refugees has settled down. Tang's he was a little itchy, then I will arrange for this group of refugees to leave. Leaving such a big hole in office. Yang Heshe said indifferently, you have already occupied a sunshine avenue, you must always leave the single plank bridge for future generations to walk, otherwise you will finish the road, and the later people will have no way to go, and then you can only toss the subordinates. The people are gone, and they are the ones who suffer. Refugees are not only found in times of great disasters. Heavy taxes and heavy labor will also produce refugees. So you are not only for the next county magistrate, but also for the people under your jurisdiction. Tang's he couldn't help but ask him, what if it's a corrupt official who stole the land and money that I had stolen from me, or gave it to the wealthy in Yizhu? Yang Heshe smiled and said, are you blind? Or is Uncle Tang a deaf? People who can take over you at this time won't be too bad, at least they can't be stupid. Tang's he touched his chin and asked, then who do you think will take over my position? Yang Heshe shook his head, it's hard to guess, only He Qing and Zhou Lingfeng are possible in this issue, Xie Hongliang in the last issue? Or Lu Yi, the eldest grandson of Lu Shangshu now. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1213. The king of Yizhu died in the military situation of the chaotic army and flew into the capital like wings. After the emperor received it, he was very sentimental and shed tears, and then people were not allowed to leak this news to the queen mother, so that the queen mother could take care of her illness. The king of Yizhu died, and all his private army was dug up, and the next step was the aftermath work. After investigating the root cause, the emperor found that some of the officials and aristocratic families who followed the king of Yizhu followed when they were fighting for the throne more than 10 years ago. It stands to reason that at least the 3 clans should be punished for treason, and as many as 20,000 people need to be charged with such an implication. Wei Ji and others went up to plead for mercy, hoping to only ask the first offender. After thinking about it, the emperor agreed, and asked Wei Ji and others to find out what the people involved in the case had done for more than 10 years, and punished them according to the law. Many people had invaded and murdered fertile fields. They used to cover up and intercede, so they were not punished. Check. This time, because of the case of King Yizhu, many people could not stand the investigation. The punishment department was so busy that they could not touch the ground, and old Tang and Wei Ji also had to stay in the punishment department to deal with felons. But there are also quite a few people who have been wronged. But no matter if they were wronged or not, those who were implicated would have their property seized first, and then they would be judged whether they were within the forgiveness stipulated by the emperor. If they were released, everything would have to start over. But so many people are screened one by one, and it is estimated that it will take half a year or even longer to complete the review. Then the Ministry of Officials was busy. This time, the officials involved, especially the officials from Jianese Road, several provincial governors were involved. Although he was not killed by his comrades who were regarded as the king of Yizhu, for example, the arrested Inspector Zhang, the inspector of Zizhu, who wrote a letter to plead guilty, all had to be replaced in the end. At this moment, the Ministry of Personnel could not recruit so many people. The key is that if people from this place are recruited, there will be shortage of people in that place. Therefore, the Ministry of Personnel was also bald. Finally, he proposed to the emperor that he wanted to take a major exam in the Ministry of Personnel after the beginning of the spring. This time, the exam would only be for the imperial guards, and the national exam would be held again in the spring. The emperor agreed after deliberation. Things started to get organized. The officials guarding Changqing Lane also left, Bai Shan and Bai Erlang could go to school again, and Manbao began to quietly try to sit in the pharmacy. Then, the harem, which was managed like a barrel by the queen, was leaked into the harem. At this time, Yin Li was already on the road with the coffins of the king and his son of Yizhu. When the queen mother heard that the king of Yizhu died in the chaos of the army, she vomited a mouthful of blood and fainted. Xiao Yuan was leading half of the imperial physicians from the imperial hospital to rescue him, and finally got the man back. The emperor was discussing matters with the ministers in the study room at that time. Hearing this, he immediately left the state affairs and went to the harem, and personally waited outside the palace of the queen mother. The queen stood beside him and looked at him apologetically. The emperor stretched his arms around her, patted her on the shoulder lightly, and sighed, "I don't blame you, it's the limit that you can hide for so many days." The queen said, "It's not Ying's, it's concubine Zhang's family who came to see her in the palace, and quietly contacted the people in Yunfan Palace." She paused and said, "Yunfan is now locked in the cold palace by me, has your majesty thought about what to do with it?" The emperor asked, "What does Zitong think? Yunfan is a girl. She can't know about her father. Zinking is only 8 years old, so let them ease the mother's heart." The emperor replied in a low voice, which is why he didn't lock Zinking with his father and brother in the first place. Xiao Yuanzheng and others withdrew, and reported to the emperor, "Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager is awake, but she refuses to take medicine." The emperor stretched out his hand and said, "Give me the medicine." The queen was worried and stepped forward, "Erlang." The emperor turned around and smiled at her, and said softly, "It's okay, you are not well, go back to the palace first." The queen looked at him worriedly as he entered with the medicine, and after a while, the palace servants in the queen mother's palace also withdrew tremblingly. Only the mother and son were left in the huge palace. The emperor put the bowl on the table, stretched out his hand to gently lift the mother up, and said softly, "Mother, take some medicine." The queen mother had gray hair, turned her head to the side with a sullen face, and ignored him. The emperor held up the spoon, and seeing that she was unwilling to take medicine, he withdrew his hand with a sigh, "How can mother be willing to take medicine?" The queen mother didn't speak for a long time. She turned her head to look at the emperor, and then said in a hoarse voice, "In my life, there are only 6 most important people. Your sister left me very early, and the pain of losing a child is like a cut. The pain in my heart, I thought I would never experience it again, but you made me suffer 3 times, even your father." The emperor clenched the bowl in his hand, The tip of his nose was sour, and he raised his head with red eyes. "Mother, do you also blame me for the death of my eldest brother and father?" The Queen Mother knocked down the medicine bowl in his hand, reached out and grabbed his sleeve and said angrily, "If you hadn't killed Saburo, how could your father have gray hair overnight, and why did he go so early?" The Emperor opened his mouth and said after holding back for a while, "Mother, I don't regret killing the third brother, I have no way out. Back then when he cut me off, my father was sitting in the back and closed one eye. I can only live if I can kill him, and only the hundreds of thousands of soldiers under my command can live." "What about the fifth one?" the Queen Mother said with her chest heaving and her eyes flushed. "He can't fight you, and the tens of thousands of private troops you support are just like children playing a family in front of you. Why can't you let him live? Or win the title? Or demoted to commoners, or exiled?" "Mother," the Emperor interrupted her, "this is all an accident. There is no eye on the battlefield." "It's not an accident," the Queen Mother said firmly. "If you really have the heart, how could Yin Li dare to kill him?" She said, "Yin Li left the capital before Wulang entered the capital. You already knew that, didn't you? Then why did you delay the opening until now? You locked him in the palace. How did he escape? Tell me, how did he escape?" The Emperor did not speak. The Queen Mother felt pain and anger in her heart. She couldn't help but slapped him on the face and cried bitterly, "I only have 2 sons, and only 2 of you brothers. Why are you so cruel? He is your younger brother, he is your younger brother." The Emperor fell to the ground silently. The Queen Mother cried bitterly, "And Xianan and Xinping, how old are they? What do they know? Xinping has not married yet. Is your heart made of stone?" The Emperor bowed his head and let her beat and scold her. The Queen stood outside the hall listening to the movement in the hall. After a while, she sighed and sent the palace servants a little further away before turning around and leaving. The Emperor was afraid that she would faint from crying too hard, so he stretched out his hand to support his mother while being beaten. Tired of fighting, the Queen Mother leaned weakly on the pillow and turned her head into the bed. "I don't want to see you, you go. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1214. The Emperor knelt on the ground and said, "Mother's love for her son is known to her son, just as I love Chengming and Ali's heart." The mother turned her back to him. The Emperor continued to kneel on the ground and said in a low voice, "Mother, do you know what the 5th son did after returning to Beijing? He provoked Chengming and Ali to fight, and Chengming finally had a child." The Queen Mother couldn't help but turned around and spat at him, and said, "You 2 sons are fighting, and you blame my son. If you didn't pull Ali and wouldn't let him go, you would be too fond of him. If he fantasized, how could he think about that position?" The Queen Mother couldn't help but pointed to his nose and scolded, "I know, you can't stand your younger brother long ago, or you wouldn't have sent Yin Li out early. When did you think about it? It was 2 years ago. Was it earlier when you quietly went south to Jianese Road?" The Emperor did not speak. The Queen Mother wanted to say something else, thinking of the 3 Ying's mother and son who were still imprisoned in the cold palace. She stopped the conversation and swallowed the words that might touch the Emperor's bottom line. She held back her tears and waved her hand, "Go away, I don't want to see you today." The Emperor did not leave. The Queen Mother also had no intention of chasing him, so she lay with her back to him. Mother and son, one was lying and the other was kneeling. It seemed that they were in one world, and they seemed to be in 2 worlds. The Empress Dowager was originally healthy, but she suffered a series of blows and got older, and then she collapsed. In the middle of the night, she was short of breath and started talking in her dreams again. The Emperor hurriedly held her hand, and after seeing the imperial doctor, he gave the medicine again. The Empress Dowager's illness was intermittent, and the Emperor handed over political affairs to the Crown Prince and Wei Ji and several ministers to deal with. He concentrated on serving the illness in the Empress Dowager's palace. The three princes wanted to follow the nearby servants, but the emperor refused, and the queen was not able to come forward. On the contrary, the emperor was relieved, and asked the princess of Yizhu to bring the king of Xiajun to come to serve the disease. The queen mother looked at the little grandson, and the condition was slightly better. For 3 consecutive days, the emperor served in the queen mother's palace. This made the hearts of the ministers nervous when they saw it, and some officials who wanted to impeach the emperor for being unfilial took back their papers, silently said nothing, and planned to talk about the law of the country when the emperor opened his mouth to intercede for the king of Yizhu. Princess Yizhu brought the medicine to Zinking, and whispered to him, "Bring it to the imperial grandmother, be careful." Zinking nodded and carefully handed it to the queen mother. The queen mother took it, drank it all in one gulp, then reached out and touched Zinking's little head, and whispered, "Good boy." When she entered Zinking, she shrank for a while, then turned to look. Seeing that the emperor came in from outside the door, she put away her smile. She handed the medicine bowl to Zinking and whispered, "You and your mother should go back to rest first." Zinking bowed back and kowtowed to the emperor again. The emperor kindly asked Zinking to get up, and the corresponding clan was also very peaceful, and the mother and son retreated carefully. When their mother and son were far away, the queen mother asked, "Where is the coffin?" The emperor hurriedly said, "I should be in Beijing tomorrow." The queen mother closed her eyes and asked, "What are you going to do with it?" The emperor lowered his eyes and said, "Bury him with common people." The Empress Dowager looked at the emperor sharply, and smiled bitterly after a while, "You don't delay at all." The emperor said, "Mother, he committed the crime of treason." "You want to kill the 3 clans for treason, do you want to kill me together? Don't forget, you are also in the 3 clans." The queen mother never believed in any laws and regulations. If the world could follow the laws and regulations, why did they break their heads and want to be emperors and power? The queen mother was silent for a while and then said, "The common people are the common people, but I want him to accompany the funeral and dedicate the tomb." It was the tomb of the late emperor, and she would be buried nearby after her death. After the death of the 3rd prince, he was also buried in the mausoleum by the late emperor. The emperor was only silent for a moment and then responded. Only then did the queen mother talk about her biggest concern, "What about Zinking and Yunfan, how do you plan to deal with them?" The emperor immediately said, "Zinking is still young, I plan to make him the king of Dizhu. If the mother doesn't want him, she will keep him by her side to raise her, and then go to Dizhu when she gets married and has children." The queen mother was a little dazed for a while and asked, "Where is Dizhu?" The emperor said, "Near Kangzhou, not far from the Bohai Sea. The 12th brother is in Leizhu, but it is not far away. In the future, the 2 uncles and nephews will also take care of each other." "Too far?" But the queen mother didn't say anything, she nodded and leaned on the pillow, and said after a while, "Tomorrow, the Ijia will send a maid to pick it up." The emperor breathed a sigh of relief and responded in a low voice. The queen mother twitched the corners of her mouth. This was considered a deal between their mother and son. The emperor opened up to AncientChina.com, but the queen mother did not appear and would not express her position on the rebellion of the king of Yizhu. Otherwise, as long as she said in front of people that the emperor's position was not right or that the king of Yizhu rebelled and had an inside story, the emperor would be drowned in the world's saliva, and he didn't know when he would be remembered by future generations. The emperor returned to the Taiji hall tiredly. The queen herself helped him take off his outer clothes, and all the palace servants in the palace retire. She brought him hot water to soak his feet, and the solace of the emperor's feet hurt a little. Then he recovered. He grabbed the queen's hand and pulled her to sit beside him. "Don't be busy, I'll do it myself." Seeing that his brows were furrowed, the queen asked in a low voice, "Is the mother still unwilling to let go? Why don't I go?" The emperor shook his head. "The queen mother has already agreed to send only one nanny to see it tomorrow." He squeezed her hand and said, she has a grudge in her heart, and you are not well. You should stay in the temple for a few days to recuperate, and let the crown princess go there. The queen gave him a sideways look. You know that you feel sorry for me, how can you know that Chen Ming doesn't feel sorry for his daughter-in-law? The emperor smiled and said, you still think you are young, just let them do this kind of thing. Chen Ming, if you feel bad, you can teach him, let the eldest daughter-in-law take a few of the third daughter-in-law with her, and share the burden for her. That's it? The queen laughed. The husband and wife laughed happily for a while, and then snuggled together. The queen hugged his arm and said, Erlang, don't pay too much attention to the comments of the courtiers. The merits and demerits should not only depend on them, but also the people. The emperor smiled bitterly and said, after 100 years, I am afraid that I will become the guilty prince. He coughed lightly and said, how about I ask Taishi Ling to change some records? Queen. She laughed and said, since the beginning of the Han dynasty, historians have been fond of using the spring and autumn writing method to conceal the faults of kings, but since it is concealed, there are traces to follow. Why do you bother future generations? The emperor pouted, but he was not persuaded. He still wanted to chat with Taishi Ling. The queen did not force him, and continued, if your majesty is bored, why don't you find a space to go out of the palace for a walk? Didn't you say when you came back from Jianese Road 2 years ago that the 3 years' income in the palace can't be worth the first month of leaving the palace? The emperor was silent, remembering the joys, sorrows he saw along the way when he went south to Jianese Road 2 years ago, remembering those disaster victims who survived alone, and seeing their perseverance, sadness, and wishes. He pursed his lips and let go of the queen's shoulders and said, I have only been in the 24th year since the founding of the Jin dynasty, but the gentry and wealthy people from all over the world have already invaded the land. I don't know how many things like this are there. He said, governing the people is not the same as fighting a war. You can use brute force to win a war, but you can't govern the people. Zitong, I want Chen Ming to go out to Beijing to practice. There has been a power outage, this is written on a mobile phone, I think it is too difficult to write on a mobile phone, so I decided to wait for the call to come and write the next chapter. Don't ask me what time the next chapter is, because the baby doesn't know, although the group said that the call would be around 2 o'clock, but I always felt that it would not be too punctual. Just like my update, ha 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 ha. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1215. The queen didn't object, she only said, when Ali goes, let him go out. The emperor pondered, the Chinese New Year is almost here, why don't you leave Ali after the New Year? The queen couldn't help pinching him, it's still early, didn't you send someone to clean up the palace early? It's not far from Luozhu, but it's only a 3-day journey. If we miss him in the future, we'll call him again. Just come back and see. The emperor was still very reluctant, and his heart ached. Ali has never left my side at such a young age. The queen said helplessly, you often complain that your mother loves the fifth so much that it makes you embarrassed, why don't you think about it, you dote on Ali too much, and Chen Ming is also embarrassed. The emperor frowned and said, what is he in trouble for? If Ali has it, I will give him a share, but if Ali doesn't have it, he has it. Isn't that enough? The queen sighed and said, could it be that you still want to learn from King Zhao Wuling? The emperor's expression changed, and he remained silent for a while with a sullen face, and then said with heartache, okay, as soon as the fifth's case is understood this time, let him go to the vassal. The queen said, you don't have to wait until you have a thorough understanding. When the king of Yizhu is sent to his burial, let him go. The emperor opened his mouth and had to close his mouth to agree under the watchful eyes of the queen. The coffin of the king of Yizhu was not widely publicized before it entered the capital, because the rebel army suddenly rose up and was pacified very quickly, so the people in the capital did not feel anything, and naturally they did not feel much about Yin Li, who had returned triumphantly. Yin Li didn't want to publicize it either. The Queen Mother was still there, and the Emperor was a real brother, so it didn't feel good to kill a prince. But when the coffin entered Beijing, he brought 1,000 soldiers and horses to escort him. When entering Beijing, he still had to control the streets he passed by in advance. When Man Bao and the others heard the news, they skipped work and went to the street to see it. Even Mrs. Lu came to see it in a carriage. Seeing the 3 coffins passing by in front of them and then slowly disappearing, Madame Lu lowered the curtain of the car after being silent for a while, and said to Lu Gui, who was driving the car, "Go back." Man Bao and the others were watching from the 2nd floor of a restaurant facing the street. A few of them peered over the railing to watch the army walk away, and then retracted their heads. "Are we taking revenge?" Bai Shan hummed softly, "Forget it." Bai Erlang touched his chest and said, "This matter is finally over." The 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief, and Bai Erlang asked, "Are we going back to Yizhu to go to school, or do we go to school in Beijing?" Bai Shan said, "Let's go to Quazijian first, take a step by step, and talk about the future." Man Bao nodded, "That's right, I haven't earned the principal of my family's restaurant yet, so I'm going to lose this time. As long as we can live in the capital, we'll stay in the capital first, and wait for me to take care of Imperial Physician Zheng and the others. After learning the skill, we will talk about it later." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang both looked at her treacherously and smiled. When the king of Yizhu died, Bai Shan only felt refreshed. The sky was high and the clouds were white, so he smiled and said, "Let's go buy some pig's trotters later. The braised pig's trotters from Tajia's shop are very delicious, so I will bring them back to Daji too. Try it." Man Bao, "Daji is injured, so I need to eat something light." Bai Shanel said, "Give him a piece." Last night he almost slipped into the kitchen to touch the meat and eat it, which surprised Aunt Rong. Bai Erlang nodded. Last night, Aunt Rong was frightened by Daji and screamed. The family thought that an assassin had slipped in, and they all jumped up from the bed. The 3 discussed it properly, went to Tu's house to buy pig's trotters, and then ran home happily all the way. Finally saw the coffin of the king of Yizhu go to Beijing with his own eyes. Bai Zhouxiang was very happy with the 3 families. Friday Lang deliberately closed the restaurant and brought home all the vegetables and meat bought in the store, and then the 3 families celebrated in a lively manner. There were 2 tables in the front yard for the servants, and they also set up 2 tables in the backyard. Mrs. Lu also sent someone to buy a good Zhuangyuan wine in the Zhuangyuan building. Let Bai Shan fill everyone with wine, and Mrs. Lu holds the cup and said, "I'm very happy today. I've got my revenge, and it's not a waste of our years of planning. This cup, I respect you all." Although Man Bao didn't like drinking very much, he also picked up the wine glass, stuck out his tongue and licked it, then drank a little bit with a bitter face. Madame Lu drank it all in one go, poured another cup, and said with red eyes, "This cup is dedicated to the souls of the unjust souls who died because of the king of Yizhu." Mrs. Lu gently spilled the wine on the ground. Man Bao thought for a while with a bitter face, and was about to drink up the wine when Bai Shan took her wine glass and poured all the wine into his own. After drinking, the 2 of them were refilled with wine, and then spilled on the ground respectfully. Bai Erlang, who was sitting beside Bai Shan, glanced at the 2 of them, turned his head and ignored them. The adults didn't see the little actions of the teenagers, and their eyes were red and sad. After wiping away his tears, Master Xiang Lu poured a glass of wine and said, "Mrs. Lu, my second son and Xiang Chao have to ask you for help." Mrs. Lu immediately said, "Don't worry, I will ask Lord Wei tomorrow. It shouldn't be difficult for Xiang Chao to come out." Of course, Master Xiang Lu also knew this, so he was more worried about Xiang Mingxiu. He wiped his eyes and said, "Mrs. Lu, we only have the second son left in the Xiang family. You are familiar with Master Wei, I also ask you and Lord Wei to plead for mercy, just hope to save our second son's life, whether it is exile or confiscated, we will follow to the family. Bai Shan immediately said, it's not like that. Speaking of which, the Xiang clan was wiped out because of the king of Yizhu. Even if he assassinated the royal family, there was a reason for that. He looked at Man Bao, we will all beg for mercy. Man Bao nodded again and again. Ever since Yin or there knew that the king of Yizhu had been executed, they had planned to rescue the Xiang family brother. At present, the people who can talk the most are Lord Wei, Lord Tang, and the Crown Prince. Man Bao is currently getting on well with the prince. At least he can see him every other day when he enters the palace to give the queen an injection. After getting along for a long time, Man Bao feels that he is not bad except for his temper. Seeing that the Zhou family and the Bai family were all concerned, Master Xiang Lu heaved a sigh of relief. These people don't even have identities at the moment. Household registration, road leads, etc. are all fake, let alone connections. The refugees and assassins, as well as the powers of the rivers and lakes in various places, they know some, but the people who go up really don't know, so things like intercourse can only go to the Bai family and the Zhou family. The dinner table became lively again, and the three Bai Shan pushed the wine glasses aside and stopped drinking, and concentrated on eating. Wu Wu Lang likes to drink very much, and he discussed with Man Bao while drinking, I have to write a letter to tell my parents about this great thing, and it's better to tell my uncle and aunt at the grave. Man Bao nodded again and again, I'll write a letter when I get home, and I'll send it out tomorrow. Bai Dalan said, that's just right, drop by and help us send a letter home. He said to Bai Erlang, I have to report safety to my father and the others. Next update around 10 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1216. The Changqing Lane was full of fun, and Zheng Shi also took out his piano and let Bai Shan play it for everyone. Yin Li just left the palace just now and went home. Lanterns were lit under the corridor of Yin's house. Mrs. Yin was waiting in the front hall with her three granddaughters and Yin Or. Yin Li strode in and asked her mother to be safe before going to see Yin Or. Seeing that his face was still good, he felt relieved. Mother, I'm going to change clothes first. Come on, hot water and everything are ready for you. Come directly to the dining room in a while. I will ask the kitchen to prepare something delicious for you. Yin Li responded with a smile, and after dinner, he called the housekeeper to the study to learn about the family's affairs. He has to go to court tomorrow morning, and there are still many things to do, so he will be able to find time in the evening to learn about it. He took out the book and listened to the housekeeper's report while writing the book that he had to deal with tomorrow. He thought that there should not be any major events in the recent period of time, and even if there were, it was caused by the three daughters. But based on what he knew about the three daughters, they had suffered a loss, and they should have been honest for a while, but he didn't expect that this time the problem was his son. Yin Li was stunned when he opened his head, and then Mo got dirty. He lowered his head and glanced at the book, then simply put it away, listened to the butler's report, and asked, so, has the young master's health improved or deteriorated during this time? The housekeeper was stunned for a moment. The young master has been making a lot of troubles recently, so he went to worry about his mental health, but he really didn't pay attention to his physical condition. But, the young master looks ruddy and doesn't pant easily anymore. Yin Li said, did he not get sick when the seasons changed? The housekeeper shook his head hesitantly, I'm not sick, but I was injured. The young master was taking medicine at that time. Usually Yin or when the season changes, he will get sick, but didn't he give himself a knife at that time? So although he was not sick, the medicine was not broken, and the needle was not punctured, so the housekeeper really didn't feel much difference. Yin Li thought about it and asked, that Zhou Man's medical skills are really so powerful? Yes, the butler did not hesitate at this point. He said, now the Empress's illness is being watched by her and Xiao Yuan. Yin Li nodded and waved, okay, you can step back. The butler stepped back. Yin Li sat and thought for a while, then got up and went to find Yin Or in the small courtyard on the west side. Yin Or Zijing, in addition to recuperating from illness, deliberately chose the side of the yard to live in. When Yin Li entered, the servants in the courtyard had already retreated and rested, and Yin Wei had also gone to bed to go to bed. As soon as he came, the servants in the courtyard would be busy again. Yin Li squeezed his hands, causing everyone to step back and go straight into the room. Yin He stood up and saluted with only his underwear on. Yin Li frowned and said, put your clothes on, what if you catch a cold? Chang Xiao quickly found a coat for Yin Or put it on, and Yin Li directly asked him to sit on the bed and talk to him. I heard how many friends you have made. Yin He replied with a low yes. He would play tricks on his grandmother and sisters, but he would not and dare not to his father, so he recounted the process of his befriending Bai Shan and the others, expressing that he liked it very much. A few friends. Yin Li didn't object to him making friends, nodded and asked, why did you stab yourself? Yin Or lowered his head and did not speak. Yin Li stared at him, sighed after a while and said, the family is preparing to kiss you. Yin Or pursed his lips and said, father, I don't want to get married yet. Why? Yin Li stared at him and asked. Yin Or said with a sullen face, Zhou Man said, I shouldn't get married early. If I don't get married, I can live a few more years. I want to live. And, he raised his head to look at his father, I asked Tai Tan, the child I gave birth might be as frail as me, and I don't want my future child to live the same life as me. Yin Li stared at his eyes for a while, then nodded slightly, and said quietly, okay, I will tell your grandmother, your marriage will be postponed, and we will talk about it later. Yin He breathed a sigh of relief and got up to take his father out. Yin Li held him down and said, no, you can rest. It's windy outside, so be careful of catching a cold. Chang Xiao lowered his head and tremblingly sent the master out. Yin Li stood outside the door, looked sideways at him and said, take good care of the young master, just do your job as a book boy. I'll call a driver for you tomorrow, you will have to take it with you wherever you go, and you can't get off. Would you still throw money at people when you meet an assassin next time? Longevity responded with a white face. Yin Li left. Chang Xiao breathed a sigh of relief, and immediately got back into the room to tell the young master the news. Yin Or had already got into the quilt and lay down, but he didn't reject it when he heard the words. He nodded and said, I see. As long as it wasn't someone sent by his sisters to interfere in his life. After returning to Beijing, the coffins of the father and son of the king of Yizhu were quietly placed in the palace, and the clan came forward to treat the mourning. Most of the clans went there because of the Empress Dowager's face, but because of the emperor's sake, they didn't dare to do it too grandly, so they kept silent until the burial. Except for those who had a heart, the people in the capital didn't even feel it. To the grand death of the prince. Of course, the king of Yizhu was not buried with the rights of a prince. He was buried with the rights of the common people. Although he could be buried in the Xianling mausoleum, he dug a hole and buried it. During this period, the case of the king of Yizhu was also turned upside down, including what happened 12 years ago. Bai Qi was posthumously awarded as the Yizhu shepherd, and he was with him in the investigation of the rebellion against the king of Yizhu. He Ziun, the county magistrate who was killed in one case, his eldest son, He Chang, and many other Yamen officers were all overturned and presented as gifts. Of course, the emperor will not ask about these details. These are all checked by Wei Ji and Old Tang and handed over to the rights. Emperor. After the emperor approved it, he thought about it and asked, where's Zhou Man's father, Zhou Yin. Wei Ji ministers standing below, forgot. After all, that's not an official. The emperor thought for a while and said, he is a righteous man, he should be rewarded, so let him posthumously be the Mianzhou shepherd. It just so happens that he is also a Mianzhou native. It was just a gift after death, and everyone had no opinion, so they all bowed and praised the emperor's wisdom. The emperor added Zhou Yin's name to the back of the book, and then sent the book back to the Ministry of Rights, sighing, have all the people involved been identified? Wei Ji said that the investigation was almost done, but there was still a trial. The emperor thought about it and then said, Tiao Yang Heshu and Tang He back to Beijing, they were investigating this matter at first, let them go to Beijing to help with the trial, the speed is faster, the Queen Mother is not in good health, don't delay this matter until the new year. Everyone immediately understood that the sentence would be sentenced as soon as possible, and most of the time after the new year, they would pray for the Queen Mother and pardon a group of people who did not commit capital crimes. Wei Ji and several ministers looked at each other, but they didn't have any opinion, because they involved 3 clans, and many of them were innocent people. They were currently locked up in the Yamen in various places. It was time to report this batch of lists. Go up. For example, several younger brothers, nephews, and nieces of Inspector Zhang, all of them were dumbfounded when they were arrested. As Inspector Zhang's younger brother, he could not escape, but he could put his nephews and nieces on the pardon list. Otherwise, it is really implicated in this way. With the current scale, 20,000 people can't stop it. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1217. The shepherd of a state is equivalent to the prefect. Of course, the actual power is a little bigger than that of the prefect. After all, it is the military and political power of a state, which is equivalent to the official of the territory. However, the former emperor abolished the state shepherds at that time. Except for the capital and the capital, they were all set up as prefects, weakening their powers. Later, the state shepherds became the honorary gifts after the death of the hero. There is no practical benefit to him other than allowing him to be recorded in the history books and have an identity passed down. Keek couldn't understand the meaning of this, but the human being was very excited, including its host, and jumped several times with joy. It put 3 big question marks in Man Bao's mind, and Man Bao explained to him in detail, civil officials and military generals have made great achievements in order to seal their wives and sons, so that they can live a prosperous and rich life, and the second. Coco made a question mark. Man Bao shook his head and said, the second is to leave a name for Qingxi. Up to the emperor, down to the people of Liman, who doesn't want to leave a name in the history, Man Bao said, my father does not have this title, no one will remember him except us. After a few generations, if we don't cultivate the genealogy, I am afraid that future generations will not know. But not now, he has a posthumous gift from the emperor, he can not only record it in the daily notes, but also record it in the actual records, in the history books. In the future generations will only need to open it. History books will know that there was such a person in the world who did such a thing. Talking, Man Bao became quiet and a little sad. This is called a wrong after death. Keek said, everyone is dead, what's the use? After thinking about it for a long time, Man Bao said, if there is reincarnation, it is useful. If not, it is really useless for the dead, but it is useful for the living. Yes, it is not only useful to living people, but also very useful. Man Bao just learned the news on his front feet, and when he was riding in a carriage on his back to pick up Bai Shan and the others in front of Kuazijian, a group of teenagers came out of the school with their shoulders on their backs, and when they saw her, they called Miss Zhou with a smile. Even Bai Shan called her with a smile, Miss Zhou. Man Bao looked at them and asked, are you taking the wrong medicine? Bai Shan smiled and said happily, you are now the young lady of the state shepherd's family, so we naturally have to be more respectful. Man Bao thought about it for a while, and then bowed in return. Then you are also the son of the Zhou shepherd's family, so I have to respect you in return. Seeing the two worship each other, Feng Zonping and others also joined in the fun and worshipped each other. Aya, the son of the Zhou shepherd's family. Oh, the master's son. Oops, the young master of the right prime minister's family. Come on, here is the son of Jing Zhaoyin's family. Come on, Miss Zhou's shepherd's family. Only Bai Erlang's teeth were sore, and he grabbed the Feng Zonping people who were following him indiscriminately. They worship them. Why are you following along? Yi Xiang said happily, why can't we join in the fun? Bai Erlang, they are childhood sweethearts, and they are in the same family. What do you mean by worshipping together? When Feng Zonping heard it, he looked at the two people facing each other, put away his hand music and said, it's true. Bai Shan and Man Bao blushed and stood up straight. When Ji Hao heard this, the smile on his face suddenly fell, and he said, people say that high class marrying a daughter, low class marrying a daughter-in-law, both of their fathers have become state shepherds, isn't it appropriate? Bai Erlang was originally feeling sad and a little jealous, and when he heard Ji Hao's words, he became unhappy, and immediately refuted, whoever said it was inappropriate, our Bai family is a little thicker than the Zhou family, and it happens to be high and low. The door, why doesn't it fit? Bai Shan nodded approvingly, and gave his junior brother and cousin an admiring look. Ji Hao said with a sullen face, no matter how tall I am, Ji's family is not as tall. Bai Erlang, your Ji family is too high to climb. Feng Zonping, Yin, or Yi Xiang and the others watched them back and forth, and they were speechless for a long time. Man Bao was a little shy at first, but when he saw that the two of them were endless, he couldn't help but say, you guys are endless, it's like you are my elders. Bai Cheng, don't forget, I am the senior sister. Going to see Ji Hao again, Man Bao frowned and said nothing. After all, he was not familiar with him. The atmosphere was a little embarrassing for a while, and Bai Shan smiled to break the deadlock. It's rare that everyone has time to spare, and there is such a happy event, so let me invite you to dinner. Man Bao immediately said, let's go to our Zhuji restaurant. My sixth brother has hired a new chef, and the dishes are delicious. Everyone had no opinion, so they happily drove out of the inner city together. It wasn't time for dinner yet, so there weren't many people in the restaurant, but the back kitchen was so busy. After all, there was a lot of preparation work. Zhou Lejun sat behind the counter and planned to make plans. He calculated the accounts for today's noon. When he found out that there was no problem, he wrote it down. As soon as he looked up and saw the little ant and the others coming in, she immediately put down her pen and greeted her, little ant, why are you here? Man Bao pointed at Bai Shan and said with a smile, he invited guests to dinner, we're here to eat. Zhou Lejun led them to the second floor with a smile, found them a good box by the window to sit, and then ran downstairs to get the menu to show them. Usually, the name of the dish is reported. After all, not everyone can read, but Zhou Lejun thinks that they may prefer to look at the menu and choose slowly. This is indeed the case. Everyone took the menu and figured it out. Feng Zonping glanced at Zhou Lejun while choosing, and then smiled with Man Bao, Miss Zhou, you are the lady of the Zhou shepherd's family, is this shop still open? Of course it's going to open, but the capital hasn't been earned back yet. Yi Xiang coughed lightly, Zonping means that your family can hire a shopkeeper and a few guys to manage the restaurant, there is no need for family members to do it themselves. Bai Shan laughed when he heard the words, and asked, do you have to buy a few servants to serve at home? Yi Xiang smiled and said, what's wrong with this? When His Majesty's imperial decree arrives at the prefectures and counties, the Ministry of Rights and the localities will be rewarded. Buy more land and invite some tenants to be gentry. It's always like being annoyed here with a smile on your face, right? Of course, Yi Xiang didn't say it. Man Bao was startled. If my father knew I was such a prodigal, he would definitely scold me. Bai Shan continued, I will also discount your brother's legs. He smiled and said, I think this is fine now. Who in this world doesn't work? Only work can create value. Feng Zonping couldn't help raising his head. Who said that? Although he bought people, the master doesn't do anything, and he also manages the servants, right? Zhou Lijun on the side couldn't help but said, isn't this not looking for work? We have so many family members, we can do it ourselves, why do we need to hire the shopkeeper and buddies, and also buy people? I think this will not only interrupt the grandfather, fifth uncle and their legs, ours will also be broken. By the way, auntie, what did they say about the daughter of the state shepherd? Man Bao squinted his eyes and said, you don't know yet, our little uncle, that is, my own father was posthumously awarded as a state shepherd. Zhou Lijun didn't quite understand, what is a posthumous gift, what is a state shepherd? See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1218. When Zhou Lijun figured out what happened, her eyes lit up when she saw Man Bao, and then she ran down to tell fifth uncle the good news. Wu Wulang and the others were very happy, and they felt sorry for their happiness. If only my uncle was still alive, our family would become an official. Saturday Lang glanced at the meat on the chopping board and said, Lijun, you go and tell Man Bao that we will invite them to eat this meal. Zhou Lijun said, my aunt said no, it's Bai Shan who paid for it, we'll just give it a discount. Friday Lang was always distressed about money, and when he heard the words, he said, then save it. I'll buy some vegetables and meat tomorrow to go home to celebrate. He sighed, I managed to earn a little money and then spent it all. I guess Man Bao doesn't have much money on him. When the fourth brother comes, how can I explain it to him? Saturday Lang didn't take it to heart. Let's be honest, the fourth brother has to understand. Anyway, we all survived, right? Friday Lang said, you say it's easy, but I'm going home. When my parents ask, what should I say? During this time, he calculated an account, calculated the restaurant, and quietly calculated Manbao. It was found that Manbao made a lot more money than them, but he should have almost spent it. The doctor's fee, the reward, including the money from the palace, as well as the money for selling flowers, the last time the reward was shared equally, and the reward for the relationship some time ago, he estimated that she spent almost the same. Friday Lang has a special feeling, I always feel that Man Bao can't save money. She earns a lot, but it seems that she can't keep money. The four of the old Zhou family nodded together and agreed, the fifth brother, can you take the money from Man Bao and save it? Saturday Lang was discouraged, forget it, Man Bao is the most like father in this respect. The money that goes into her hands, unless she is willing, no one will want to take money from her hands. The people in the box on the second floor were also talking. Man Bao poured tea for everyone and asked Yin Or, is the military disaster in Jianese Road serious? Yin Yudao, I asked my father, and my father said that the war was over soon. Although some troops scattered into the countryside, the main force had been captured by the Western Army. Not enough to be afraid of. He paused and said, but casualties in battle are inevitable. When Ji Hao saw her questioning in such detail, he couldn't help but ask, why, are you going back to Mianzhou? Man Bao glanced at Empress Bai Shan and said, almost so, we have to go back for the new year. Ji Hao said, it's okay to live in the capital. It's snowing in winter, but it's not easy to travel. Bai Shan glanced at him, frowned slightly, then changed the subject and said, young Master Ji is going to study at the Imperial College in the future. Ji Hao grumbled in response. Originally, the family didn't plan to let him study at the Kuazijian so early, because he felt that his temperament was uncertain, and he planned to wait until he was engaged or married, and his personality became calmer before going to the Quazijian to study. But now Ji Xiang felt that he would not be able to stay in this position for long, and with Ji Xiang's official position, it was obvious that Ji Hao would not be able to enroll in Quazi school, so he enrolled in advance. Even Ji Xiang didn't ask him to wait until next year to start school in the spring, but pestered Kong Jiju for a few days and stuffed him into it. He didn't notice that there was anything wrong with this, but Bai Shan's eyes dimmed and he thought about it. Even Feng Zhongping couldn't help but look at Yi Xiang and thought about it. Man Bao and Bai Erlang looked at this, then turned to look at that, looked at each other, shrugged their shoulders, lowered their heads and ate snacks and ignored them. Although there were some quarrels, everyone was quite happy overall. After a meal, they each said goodbye and went home. Mrs. Lu at home also knew about the posthumous gift. This is what she heard when she went to Mr. Wei today to talk about the Xiang family brother. When she came back, she was happy and had a glass of wine. Zheng Shi burned incense and sacrificed to Bai Qi, and then went back to the house to wipe away his tears. Obviously, he also had a lot of feelings. Master Wei said that both Xiang Chao and Xiang Mingxiu have been sent back to the heavenly prison, and Xiang Chao can come out at any time. It's no problem if you want to see them, but it will take some time for Xiang Mingxiu to come out. Lu, the old lady, was a little drunk at the moment and said with a smile, although Xiang Mingxiu assassinated the king of Yizhu, he didn't succeed, and secondly, he can be forgiven, so Mr. Tang will not be executed, but he should be killed. Exile. She whispered, after all, the Queen Mother is still there. How could his legs be exiled? Man Bao rolled his eyes and asked, what if there are more people begging for mercy? Mrs. Lu smiled and said, you can give it a try. I listened to what Mr. Wei said. The Queen Mother is seriously ill. There may be a pardon a year ago, except for the death sentence. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other and both had some ideas. Forgiveness is also divided into several situations, such as exile. After the pardon, it may be changed to confinement or confiscated slaves, while the latter may be directly released to the commoners. And some people with official titles were demoted to commoners, and once they were pardoned, it was possible to restore a little title or official position. Although there were only 2 dynasties in the Great Jin dynasty, they were pardoned several times, which is almost always the case. As a result, Bai Shan, Bai Erlang, and Man Bao began to blow all kinds of wind. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang began to sing and harmonize with Feng Zhongping, Ji Hao, and Yin or others in school, telling them how rich the Xiang family used to be, how benevolent they were to the tenants and the local people, and how bad it was for them to suffer. Hard to survive. Everyone is not very interested in the front, but they are very interested in the matter of bearing humiliation and revenge on Mingxiu, especially how he contacted the righteous among the victims to assassinate the king of Yizhu. Seeing this, Bai Shan combined the words they took out from Man Bao, and made up the story of Xiangjia's revenge into ups and downs. It was majestic but soul-stirring, which fascinated all the teenagers. Then when I heard that such a hero was not only broken by the king of Yizhu, but also sentenced to exile, they all felt sorry, so they went back to blow the table wind with their father or grandfather. If the wind is not enough, tell the story to the brothers. Sisters, pester their mother or grandma to come out and blow the pillow wind. The wind was too strong. When the emperor was looking through the papers one day, he found more than a dozen papers for Xiang Mingxiu. He frowned and read it, but he didn't understand why so many people suddenly mentioned Xiang Mingxiu. I saw the prince who accompanied him to dinner also said, "Father, the brothers of the Xiang family are also considered bitter masters. After all, everyone in the family is gone, why don't you let them go?" The queen also said, "Let it go, don't let people publicize it, and the queen mother should not pay attention now. It's okay to let it go. Although it's against the law, it can be generous outside the law, but why do you all think of interceding with your brothers? The crown prince said, as a matter of course, "Zhou Man begged me, my son felt that she had done a good job in treating her mother, and she didn't ask for any other reward, but only for this, so I will reward her." See you at 8 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1219. The emperor thought about it for a while, but he didn't bother much. He nodded, and then asked, "You still let Feng Shangshu and the others help you to intercede?" The crown prince frowned. "No, I just told the royal father what to do with them." The emperor pondered, "Then who were they looking for?" The next day the emperor knew who was looking for them. There was no way. Bai Shan's story was too exciting. What's more, he went back and discussed it with Manbao Bai Erlang. The fake mixed in and said that the classmates and their families in the Quasi Academy didn't want it. Even people like Feng Shangshu were a little obsessed with the story after hearing the story from his grandson, and even took time to go to Tianjing to look at Mingxiu. Good stories always spread faster, especially in places with a strong academic atmosphere like Quazixiu. Everyone communicated after class and got together after school, so it was passed from Quazixiu to the Taixiu next door, and then to the 4 schools next door. At the same time, brothers and sisters at home were also very interested, and the reunion of sisters and sisters spread in the back house. The next day Yin Likao took this as a small talk and told the emperor about it. As Jingzayin, in addition to the gossip about his family, he would gossip with the emperor for some anecdotes or matters involving ministers in the capital. The emperor was all interested and asked, "Did Xiang Mingxiu really enter a cave like a peach blossom after falling into the water, and found the martial arts secrets in it?" Yin Li smiled and said, "I also asked Feng Shangshu, and Feng Shangshu said that he asked Xiang Mingxiu, and Xiang Mingxiu said that his swordsmanship was learned from a night when he was fleeing, and there is no cave." The emperor was slightly disappointed, but he has been able to learn from a weak scholar to a knight in a short period of time, and he has worked hard. Yin Li said, "I checked it out when I led troops to Suizhu. The Xiang family of Dongzizhuang was quite famous in Suizhu. During the Wei and Jin dynasties, they moved to Suizhu, and their ancestors made a prefectural history. No one can enter the office, but the children of the direct branch have been studying, and it can be regarded as a family of poetry and books." The emperor sighed, thought about it, and took out the book of Feng Shangshu's plea for mercy, signed the word quasi-pardon on it, sealed it, and put it aside. When Yin Li saw it, he lowered his eyes and stood beside him obediently. The emperor did not pay attention to his actions, and continued to ask, "You went to dispatch the Western army, have you seen their defense?" "Look, there are some small gaps," and General Lu immediately corrected them. The emperor nodded, "Since you've seen it, how do you think Tubo is fighting now?" Yin Li was startled, frowned, and said, "It's stronger than it was more than 10 years ago. It's just 3 years after Dajhan, the Tubo has been a minister to me, Your Majesty." The emperor showed him a letter from the Ministry of Rights and said, "There is an envoy from Tubo, saying that this year's grassland snow disaster, so the annual tribute is directly reduced by half." Yin Li hurriedly took it. The emperor said, "I don't want to fight, but if they have wolf ambitions, I'm not afraid. In the past, you led the Western army and guarded the border. You said, if there is a war on both sides, how many troops will we need? It's not whether they can win, but how many troops are needed. Obviously the emperor thinks they can win." Yin Li also felt that they would definitely win if they really fought, but why did they have to fight? As Jing Zhaoyin, he knew how big the pit was, so he pushed the pot back to the emperor. "This minister has been away from the border for many years and knows very little about the current military strength of Tubo. Your Majesty might as well ask Li Shangshu to ask. War should be discussed with Li Zhen, Minister of War." "Oh, and Lu Hui, Minister of Household. The emperor was slightly disappointed that he could not get any advice from Yin Li, so he waved him off. As soon as he left, the emperor handed the approved book to Guzhong, especially the book asking for forgiveness of Xiang Mingxiu, which he put on the top. Tell Tang Qing on duty, although the queen mother is ill, but both ears and eyes are good, let them be a little quieter. Guzhong hurriedly responded, bent over and was about to retreat. The emperor stopped him again, coughed lightly. You ask the two clever people to walk outside the palace and listen to what the outside world is saying about Xiangxia. Story. Yin Li is good at everything, that is, he speaks in a straightforward manner with a straight face. No matter how good the story is, he will get the first 3 points as soon as he retells it. As soon as Guzhong heard it, he knew that it was the emperor playing with his heart. He immediately raised his voice in response, bowed and stepped back. As the head of the censor, Mr. Tang, of course he has heard the stories that are circulating outside, and he knows more than everyone else. This story was made up by the 3 children, and he burst out laughing when he thought that he received a local special product from Jianzhou sent by Zhou Man when he returned home that day. From the time those 3 teenagers entered Beijing to the present, it seems that in order not to be reminiscent of Magistrate Tang, they have never visited the house in person. Even though they were locked up in prison before, their family also passed the news through Weiji. I have never come to find him, let alone a gift. Now that the dust has settled, they have fallen, and they have come. A group of people from Mianzhou came to see him, the father of Yazhu's parents and officials, and the gifts from Jianzhou turned out to be souvenirs. Old Master Tang took the book to find Ji Xiang, and pulled Ji Xiang to find Feng Shangshu. It just so happened that the yamen hadn't started yet. Because there were big bosses who reviewed and passed the papers that should have been sent to the Ministry of Punishment early the next morning arrived in Feng Shangshu's hands not long after. Then, after Feng Shangshu took a look at Ji Xiang and Lord Tang, the book that was supposed to be executed the next day, he invited Tao Yi, handed the book to him, and said, "Put those 2 people in the prison." Right. Tao Yi took it, swept the book with 1 glance and 10 lines, and then glanced at Ji Xiang and old Tang who were sitting in the chief's office drinking tea. He was smart and didn't ask any more questions. He bowed and stepped back and thought about it. The clerk said, "Go to Changqing Lane, find the Bai family, and ask them to pick them up from the heavenly prison." He said that His Majesty Long An has pardoned Xiang Mingxiu. The clerk hurriedly responded. Only then did Tao Yi begin to prepare materials to release people in the heavenly prison. When a person is released, it is not necessary to go directly to the prison to unlock the lock, but also to go through the formalities, why the person is locked up, and why they are released again. When Tao Yi finished writing the document, the other colleagues in the criminal department had left the yamen to go home early. He had to work overtime to get to the Tianjing. Zhou Man and the others were squatting on the steps in front of the Tianjing, waiting for him. As soon as he saw him coming, he jumped up and greeted him with a smile on his face. Tao Yi couldn't help but sigh, "It's good to have a relationship. You are more comfortable and convenient, but I still have to work overtime for you." Bai Shan immediately said, "Master Tao, thanks to your care when we were in prison, we also brought you some Jianzhou specialties." Tao Yi paused in his footsteps. He didn't realize that he couldn't accept the gift. He just thought it was strange. "Jianzhou? Are you not from Mianzhou?" Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1220. Manbale said, "Haha, we have a friend who came from Jianzhou and brought special products. I don't know if Master Tao recognizes it, Master Shifu, the governor of Jianzhou." Tao Yi's eyes flickered. Is it the in-laws of Yu Yishi? He didn't know Fu Liang, but he knew about Yu Wei. Yu Wei's shock was earth-shattering before. As the Minister of Punishment, of course he wanted to find out the whole story. Did that remonstrance come from Yu Wei's original heart, or was it bought or something? and then he knew what was going on at Yu Wei's house, and that Yu Wei's in-laws had just arrived in the capital. At that time, he glanced at it casually, and the governor of Jianjian, Shi Jinjing, was reporting his work. At that time, he also found out that Zhou Man was in and out of Fu's house. He also checked carefully, and now he can't be sure. Yes, they are still with Zhou Man. Thinking of Ji Xiang and Lord Tang who came to deliver the book in person, Tao Yi did not refuse, accepted their gifts, and took them to the heavenly prison to pick up people. Contrary to what Man Bao and the others expected, not only the Xiang brothers were imprisoned in that heavenly prison, but Napapu and Kai Yuniang were also imprisoned in separate cells. Tao Yi waved his hand and asked the officer to open the door and bring the people out. Seeing that their eyes were on Bapu and Kai Yuniang, he explained, before they had to interrogate them and collect evidence, so the two of them missed Qiu Niang. Behead, now all those who have been sentenced to beheaded in the prison have been beheaded, and the exiles are also on their way, so the two of them are left. The three full treasures. Man Bao glanced at Qiu Niang, a little unbearable. Qiu Niang is also considered a meritorious deed. Can you avoid death? Bapu, who was sitting on the other side, heard the words and immediately grabbed the door of the prison and said, "Little genius doctor, I have also made meritorious deeds. Can I avoid death?" Man Bao glanced at him, wrinkled his face and was about to speak, when Bai Shan said lightly, "Forget it, you have 4 lives, and one of them was an official. That official is not a good person. He didn't chase me to arrest me. I thought about it carefully. Maybe he wanted to kill me to silence me, because I was afraid that I would reveal their secrets." Bai Shan said angrily, "You know what their secrets are, they are afraid to reveal your secrets." He didn't think that an ordinary Yaman in Muzhu knew about the rebellion. How could Bapu know why, but seeing that these high-ranking officials delayed his Chuzhan in order to ask him about Kijia village, it was obviously a big deal. I don't know why Xiang Chao, who was brought up again, carried Xiang Mingxiu out tremblingly. Seeing that the three of them still had the heart to entangle with a strange prisoner, he said angrily, "It's burning your ass, why are you still so idle? Man Bao, where the fire is, you can go out. What's the hurry? Oh, we forgot to tell you that brother Xiang has been pardoned, and we can go home." Xiang Chao's eyes widened, and after a moment of excitement, he was speechless. Why can such an important thing be forgotten? Man Bao nodded to Qiu Niang who was looking at her, then turned to leave. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang helped Xiang Chao to lift Xiang Mingxiu up. Xiang Chao backed lightly and almost didn't fall. He disliked it so much. Don't lift it, our second son doesn't weigh much. He can get people out on his own." In the lobby, Tao Yi took out the documents and signed them to the prison head. After the cell head verified the identities of Xiang Chao and Xiang Mingxiu, he asked them to sign them, and then waved them away. Lu Gui caught up with the carriage and helped carry Xiang Mingxiu into the carriage. After the 5 people got into the carriage, they realized that the car seemed to be a little crowded. So Man Bao looked at Bai Erlang, and Bai Shan also looked at Bai Erlang. Shiro. With luck, he turned around and got out of the carriage after snorting, and sat on the carriage with Lu Gui. Xiang Chao asked anxiously, "What about our Xiang family? Why didn't Xiang Lu and the others come to pick us up?" Bai Shan, "Oh, they live far away. Master Tao sent people to Changqing Lane to call us. We came over immediately when we received the news. We have already asked people to inform Xiang Liu. They should be at my house by now." Wait. It was only towards this that he breathed a sigh of relief. Xiang Mingxiu asked, "Your Majesty's forgiveness is what you asked for?" Man Bao said, "How can we have that ability? We asked the Crown Prince and some ministers in the court to help and intercede." Xiang Mingxiu, "Isn't that what you asked for?" Bai Shan coughed lightly and said, "This intercession process is a bit tortuous. Listen to me and tell you slowly. don't miss out when you go out later. So I told him the story they made up. Of course, the story was too long, and it was only a start when they returned to Changqing Lane, but the vivid description, not only Xiang Chao, but also Xiang Mingxiu was dumbfounded. Doubt, is this really him? Xiang Kaidu touched his chest suspiciously and said, was I so brave when I escaped with the second son? Bai Shan and Man Bao nodded together, yes. Bai Erlang put his head in from the curtain and said, by the way, I have already planned to write this story down and sell it to a bookstore to spread the word. Do you mind if I use you to create it? Bai Shan sells for Bai Erlang, his handwriting is not bad, and his writing is not bad. The most important thing is that the story was thought by the three of us together, and it was created based on your foundation. Don't worry, the story will not be bad. Man Bao nodded again and again, everyone likes the story so much, when it's written, he can give you some money. Bai Erlang waved his hand very generously and said, money is a trivial matter, just a little bit, I want one. Neither Bai Shan nor Man Bao would argue with him, yes, I'll give it to you. Seeing that the two of them didn't care at all, Bai Erlang said, can you write me alone without writing your two names? Bai Shan was unhappy, the three of us thought about the story together, and I made up most of it. It's good for you to make one, but you still want to take it for yourself. Man Bao, that's right, because we asked you to write it out, we didn't share any money with you. I don't care about money, I'll give you the money, and you'll give your name. Man Bao looked at Bai Shan, and Bai Shan hesitated for a while, then nodded, okay, then it's settled, you don't have a penny. Bai Erlang narrowed his eyes with joy, waved his hand and said, I have money or something, but I'm not like you, I spent all my savings. Since the money is no longer my share, you can discuss the matter of sharing it yourself. Bar. Then his head shrank out, and as soon as the curtain was put down, he happily went to plan how to start writing when he went back in the evening. The story told orally is different from the story written, and the writing should be smooth. Man Bao looked at Bai Shan, and Bai Shan also looked at Man Bao. The two exchanged glances, and then turned to look at Xiang Mingxiu together. Xiang Mingxiu. Shouldn't this kind of impostor private matter be discussed quietly, why discuss it in front of him? And to give up the author's name just for such a small amount of money it's too disrespectful. See you tomorrow.